they did something that's pretty frowned upon, which is they tried to basically get the animals to move for their shot. And of course, they got them to move like in our direction. And so all these bison started coming towards us, and then they got spooked by us, and they literally started running a circle around us. My camera assistant was like freaking out. I was still seeing things through the lens, so like I wasn't as freaked out. But he's like, I've got an air horn ready. Like, if we're going to need to like clear this, I can try and blow this thing. And we were literally like full camera setup, backing up, walking backwards as this herd of bison just kept coming towards us, like in full defense mode.
Welcome to The Practical Filmmaker, an educational podcast brought to you by the Filmmaker Institute and Sunscreen Film Festival, where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and the steps they took to find their success today. On today's show, Alex Goetz takes us into the wild world of wildlife filmmaking, telling us what it takes to get into that corner of the industry and some of his favorite stories in the field. Find the full transcripts and more at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. I'm your host, Tanya Musgrave, and today we get to chat with wildlife filmmaker and co-founder of Running Wild Media, Alex Goetz, who has done work for Nat Geo, the BBC, PBS, and many more. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is awesome. I haven't gotten the chance to interview anyone who's done wildlife filmmaking before, and I've got a lot of questions, so buckle up for some rapid fire.
Yeah.
But let's start with how you got into this. What's been your journey so far?
Yeah, it's been a little unorthodox. Growing up, I knew wildlife was something that I was really passionate about as a child. And I wanted to work with animals in some capacity. I didn't know what it was. I took kind of like the typical kid career paths, which was like, I want to be a veterinarian or a biologist or, I don't know, a zookeeper.
Yeah.
And as time went on, I realized I'm pretty terrible at like math and sciences. And I started to learn in like high school that photography and like video was where my interests really were. And it wasn't until I saw Planet Earth by the BBC that like it all connected. The first time I saw it, it like blew my mind. I knew like in that moment, and I even like stood up and I said it with the people that I was watching it with. I'm like, this is what I want to do as a living. Awesome. And I had no idea. No one around me knew like that this was actually like a real career. You kind of just see these things on TV and you're like, they just magically exist.
Right.
So I ended up going to Bowling Green State University here in Ohio, which has a film production program. And so I studied traditional film production. They were basically like grooming you to move to LA or Atlanta or New York and like work as a PA up the ranks.
Yeah.
And I get to my like film program and I'm like, I want to do wildlife film. And they're like, we don't know what to tell you, but like set up this light. So it took kind of a strange path. I took a job during my time at college for a PBS station, which wasn't dealing in wildlife at all, but it was doing more doc style content. And I knew that was a little bit more of the direction I wanted to go. And that's actually where I met my business partner, Justin Grubb. Okay. He was studying biology at the time, and he wanted to be like the next wildlife host. Ooh. And like a Jeff Corwin, or like a Jack Hanna.
Whoa, Jeff Corwin.
Yeah, he had come into the PBS station and like pitched a wildlife show, and was like, "I need crew to come do this," and I was like, the only one who jumped up and was like, "Let's go."
The only one.
Yeah,
at PBS. Shame.
Yeah, and I mean, it was like a student-run thing.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, at the time I was employed there, so it's like I could go and do this. So I jumped on the opportunity, and kind of from there, I realized like I should study environmental science as a minor. I should do film production as a major, and kind of hand in hand, like working with him, I was learning a lot about biology. He was learning a lot about the film side, and then it kind of it's been going ever since. Wow. Since like 2011 or 2012, we've been working together doing wildlife film.
Wow. So I would love to know how the conversation went when you guys got your first big gig.
It's still been like a weird trajectory because we didn't still know how to get into the industry. Like I was still coming from the traditional film background where I knew I could find PA gigs on sets and things.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't figuring out how to land these wildlife gigs initially. Yeah. And so what we started doing, much to like the dismay of our significant others at the time, was like we were saving up all of our money to self-fund all of our short films.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just traveling around the world on our own dime, filming things and like submitting them to film
Wow.
festivals, hoping
Wow.
that we could get something. So we created a short film in Honduras about an island chain that was living like sustainably off of a reef, and we submitted it to a National Geographic Film Festival.
Hmm.
And we ended up being finalists in that.
Wow.
And then we ended up losing. And then the following year, we actually made a second film and submitted it again.
Mm.
And we're finalists and ended up winning. And so that was kind of
Wow.
like
Yeah.
that moment of winning this Nat Geo award was like
Mm-hmm.
we point at as like the launching point.
Wow.
Everything before that was just like we were living off of like raisins and carrot sticks in like our very cold apartment together, like suffering for the art, I guess.
Yeah. You still paid your dues.
Yeah. And so from there, like it really took off, and
Okay.
it's kind of taken shape in different ways. Like Running Wild Media is very much like a production agency or a creative
Mhm.
agency, in that we do a lot of work for nature and wildlife organizations that will approach us like, hey, we have a story we need told.
Okay.
Here's a budget. Can you guys make us a short film or a longer film?
Mhm.
And that helps get the word out about conservation or wildlife.
Okay.
But then we're also now moving into the broadcast aspect of it, where we're
Okay.
getting hired to be like a camera crew
Mm-hmm.
that goes out and shoots for like a Nat Geo or a BBC.
I remember somebody saying that if you wanted to be a Nat Geo photographer, you basically had to be an anthropologist or a zoologist first and like live in that environment for like 2 years before the camera even came out. And then like the camera was actually secondary, and like completely understanding the subject first. And so I'm guessing that things have changed a lot since then, if that was like indeed how it actually was. You know, photographers don't fly first class anymore. I'm guessing that you have to be, and I think your environmental science like speaks a lot to that, but that you have to be extremely aware of, you know, like the behavior of your subjects and like work or like work closely with somebody who is. But like, what's your crew look like out there? Is it just the two of you?
At times, yeah, it's like 2 or 3 people on like what I would deem like a smaller budget wildlife production.
What would a smaller budget wildlife production like hover around?
So one of the ones we did this past year is a 10 episode production, and I think each episode, pre-production and post, falls at like 1.5 million an episode.
Okay.
All right. And they were like, yeah, this is small budget.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, you'll have crew sizes up to like 5 or more, depending on you know what the subject matter is.
Yeah. Would that just be like other shooters, like other camera operators, or like what kind of roles are there? You know, because it's not like there's a first AD somewhere on set or that kind of thing.
Sometimes you'll just have like a producer and then a cam op. Okay. Or you'll have like a cam op and a camera assistant. In my case, like I worked with both. At one point, we did have 2 cam ops going out for a 3-week stint with a producer. Okay. And then there was a few times this past year in 2021, we did about 6 months of shooting total in 2021, like on location. Wow. And a lot of times it was just myself, the camera operator, and a camera assistant trying to find all the subjects they wanted filmed and film them. And yeah, I think you're right. Like there is a lot of like ecology and biology that goes into it that like is really necessary to find what you're looking for.
A lot of it is dependent on whether or not a critter decides to show up, right? Like and you said, you know, it was like a 3 or even a 6-week shoot. Like how long are typical shoots, and like how would you invoice for that? You know what I mean? Is it like it's until we get these shots, and it might be 5 months or
So they have like insurance that they'll cash in on if like absolutely nothing goes right in a stint. But I mean, they're paying every day you're there.
Really? Okay.
So like for 3 weeks, I'm getting paid for 21 days of work.
Wow. Okay.
To basically sit and hope that I get what they're asking for. And if I don't, they're like, well, on to the next thing. And like, usually that's how it goes. It's like we're fully expecting. We're getting set up with like producers at an agency or a production house that are doing a lot of the research beforehand to make sure we're getting like into the spot that we could best be successful.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we're always going to find what we're looking for.
Interesting. So their pre-production is more about like spending somebody spending some time out there way beforehand saying like, no, this is their usual watering hole kind of thing.
Sometimes you do have a biologist with you, or you're working with researchers or biologists who are working with that species that they're trying to film.
Yeah.
And like you have a research team back in pre-production who is just like communicating constantly with these researchers or these biologists.
Wow. Okay.
To be like, how do we make this a successful shoot? And we're not just like making these guys sit outside for 3 weeks and paying them, which is nice.
Is there some kind of a thing that you would walk on set and just be like, oh, or not on set, but like you would walk in and just be like, I can't be a part of this production because I know that there's red flags here, you know? What would you warn newcomers about?
I think that like what I found in the past is that if I get the opportunity to pick my camera assistant or I know the producer, like, and we go out in the field, the 2 or 3 of us, like I feel super comfortable.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes when you bring in additional people that you have no experience with, you really have no idea what their comfort level is.
Yeah.
There's times where we're like, we did a 4-week shoot in Yellowstone in March. It was averaging like negative 20s to like 20 degrees. And I mean, we were up 4 a.m. to like 8 p.m. at night.
Mercy.
In like all day long shoots for 4 weeks straight.
Yeah.
I don't really know how like we survived this shoot.
That sounds brutal.
We were running, I think, on like absolute fumes. Like there's moments where you go and do shoots like that where you're like, oh, I know I need to have somebody with me that I absolutely trust and is not going to burn out after like 5 days and just immediately become like a hindrance to this shoot.
Yeah.
And so that actually creates kind of like a big obstacle for newcomers trying to get into the industry. Is they'll like reach out to like established shooters or producers or cam ops and be like, hey, I would love to carry your bags or carry your tripod or whatever to get experience. And a lot of times we're like, we would love you to do that, but we can't take the risk of having somebody show up and be tired and exhausted on day 3 and basically like pull the whole shoot momentum down.
Yeah.
So it really like this whole industry, same with like the main film industry, is about knowing people. Yeah. Because you got to know who can hike with you for 3 weeks or 4 weeks and not burn out. There's different routes that people can take to go into this, but definitely one of the things in it, make stuff like film in your own backyards, film wildlife in your own backyards. There's always some sort of conservation topic you can film in your own backyard, in your own community. Yeah. And like, yes, raccoons and robins might not be a sexy animal to film for you right now, but to somebody maybe in Australia or India, like where these animals don't exist, you need to just know your audience when you make your film and distribute in a different location where people will actually appreciate the animal that you're filming in your backyard. Yeah. But like really for wildlife film, a lot of the people I know who've gotten their starts, it's because they make a short film and they do festival runs with it. And people see the potential that that person has to do work on their productions. And that's like a great way to get into it. But like if somebody wants to take a more traditional route, there's obviously internships. There's something called like a bursary, which is like, especially in the UK, I think it's more of a thing. But it's kind of like a paid internship opportunity for a set year for a company, like a production company doing wildlife film. It's not going to be much. You're still going to probably be like sleeping on a couch and not eating a ton, but like it's going to get you on like every production that company's doing in that year and get you a bunch of credits. Wow. And so they have like bursaries for cam ops so that you can go and tag along on these projects and learn from the people actually doing the work. And then I believe they have some that are like more of a producing side as well type deal.
Say bursaries, like spell that?
Bursary.
Okay, bursary.
So like BBC offers them, like wildlife film bursaries. And then a lot of production companies will as well. But like really making your own film and like showing your dedication to it is the biggest thing. Yeah. Yeah. I think anybody can do. Like, it's like I mentioned earlier, like you can't message somebody who's already doing it and expect that they're going to be like, come on, like, because there's just so many hurdles and like risks they take with bringing somebody that they don't have 100% trust in yet. That's my advice. I think a lot of people think it comes down to contacting people, but I really think it's showing that you're like ready to do the work. I mean, I know when I first started, there was so many mysteries about this like industry
Yeah.
that like I wish somebody was like, here's what's going on. But
Yeah.
for the longest time it was like hidden. Like they wanted the barrier of entry to be like very difficult. But
Yeah.
it's just like, especially with like providing opportunities for minorities and women and people of color, like
Yeah.
we need to have that curtain pulled back to show them like, all right, here's some steps you can take if you want to get into this, because it's historically been an old white guy industry here in the wildlife world, especially.
Really, really.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, and I really appreciate it too. Because it's just, it's like it's been something that's been like just shrouded in mystery in general. I mean, there's not really much of an IMDb, I guess, for like wildlife video. Like, is there a Mandy.com? Is there like a Staff Me Up and Film and TV Jobs? Or like, I know like the writing community is big on Twitter.
Yeah, there's definitely places you can go. I think the Talent Network is a UK based website that focuses more on like BBC type gigs, a lot of like documentary style stuff. I've seen Nat Geo shoots come through on Staff Me Up. They tend to be more like television focused, like not as much wildlife. There may be some natural history associated with it, but I've seen those come through. But really the film festivals are kind of the big thing. And that's where you also realize like how small this industry is because you're going to just run into the same people.
What are some of the main ones?
Yeah, so the two biggest ones are Jackson Wild in, I guess it's in Wyoming.
Wyoming, yeah.
And that's like every other year. That's the big US one. There's some smaller, like really great ones in the US, like International Wildlife Film Festival in Missoula, Montana. There's some DC based film festivals focused on wildlife and conservation. And then in the UK, the big one, the big deal is Wild Screen. They call it like the Oscars of wildlife film.
Wow.
It's like the big wigs are going to be there. Like you might have a shot with David Attenborough. Like,
wow. At these wildlife Oscars. I mean, like the Oscars, like you need to be invited. Could anybody go if they just wanted to?
Technically, yeah. I mean, they're crazy expensive, but it's like, it's that whole thing of like you're investing in
absolutely
meeting the people.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they recognize the barrier of entry that causes. And so they'll be like volunteer opportunities where it's like volunteer this day and you're going to get like a day off on this day so that you have opportunities to go and like mix and mingle with people or see films and things like that. So volunteering is also at these film festivals kind of like a great way to meet like not only like the higher ups, but your peers who are probably volunteering at the same time as you and on their way up too.
I know that in the traditional film area, there's really the high level jobs are reserved for people who are part of that union. Is there a union that's like necessary to be part of this crew? Like,
nope.
We
just,
you just gotta be crazy enough.
Yeah, it really is. That was basically what I was going to say. And then I'm like, should I say that? Yeah, you do just got to kind of be crazy enough. There has been talks, and I think one was attempted to start back in the day. But there's definitely been talks because, I mean, there are some guys, like when you look at something like Planet Earth, a lot of those shoots, you break down an episode into sequences, which are usually like 3 to 5 minutes a sequence.
Yeah.
They're estimating about a week a minute to get footage. So they're spending a week on a subject just to get 1 minute of footage.
Wow.
So I think on Planet Earth 2, I heard it was about 5 weeks per sequence and only one sequence went over. And that was filming snow leopards. But I mean, when you're there for like 3 to 5 weeks, I mean, you're in it. Like you're you're working the entire time. And so oftentimes you find that like, you come home and you're like dead to the world for like another 3 weeks to like recoup. And so I think there's been talks about like, what should our standards look like?
Yeah. I'm curious what some of the standards are now, like especially for some entry level filmmakers like in this field, because just warning or not necessarily warning, but like giving them a heads up of what they could expect. What could they expect to invoice and like what would be included in that?
Yeah, usually your travel's all covered. Your expenses are all covered. You could expect to do like a half day rate for travel days. You normally get like a per diem and it could be like $50 or more a day.
All right.
And then like literally all your expenses are covered. All your food is covered.
Nice.
Like rentals and things like that. And there's usually some insurance that's booked for the shoot to like keep you a little bit safer.
Yeah, because I was going to ask that too, like insurance wise. So they would set that up for you?
Yeah, there's some insurance that's like for the production. Yeah, fortunately I haven't had to use it. So I don't really know like what
Yeah.
all it covers now that I
Yeah.
think back on it.
Yeah.
And then like your day rate, which I mean, you're there, like if I got booked 21 days, like you're getting your day rate every day. Starting rates could be somewhere from like $450 a day
Okay.
for like 3 to 5 weeks,
Gotcha.
all the
Gotcha.
way up to, whoever is like the
Yeah. Yeah.
making the big dollars.
Yeah. That was always something like when you enter into a completely different place, because like union rates, they're all posted.
Yeah.
You can kind of go and see like, oh, this is what I should be, this is what I should be charging, right? But for some of these offshoots, like,
Yeah.
hey, by the way, you're gonna be put in danger this whole
Yeah.
entire time. um, Sometimes you gotta have that little bit of crazy. Like I immediately think of like Sean O'Connell. I'm curious if you really related with the Secret Life of Walter Mitty when he was out there with those
Yeah.
the snow leopards. That'd be incredible.
I haven't gotten to see snow leopards yet, but there's definitely moments like that where you're
Yeah.
just like sitting there and you're like, this is amazing. It's freezing cold or it's really hot. But like what we get to do is like pretty awesome. I forgot one point about like what to expect maybe financially
Yeah.
is like if you bring your own kit or like parts of your kit. So like if you
Mhm.
own all your own lenses or your own camera bodies and tripods,
Yeah.
they'll rent all that from you.
Oh,
It like
nice.
in it
It's
like
like a rental fee.
industry, yeah, like industry level rates.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it's a nice thing to roll out there with your own kit, knowing
Yeah.
everything you've got, and then
Yeah.
on top of that, getting like a bunch of money each day to rent your own kit.
I was curious about that kit. I was going to ask about the tools of your trade and what gear or gadget is your old reliable in that kit.
So I would say the old reliable, and it's not really that old in the grand scheme of things, is the Canon 50 to 1000 millimeter lens.
Ooh.
It kind of makes the rounds on like the internet as like a viral lens because it looks outrageous and like spec wise it actually is.
Yeah.
But it's a 50 to 1000 millimeter lens
That's
with a
insane.
1.5 times extender built into it.
Oh my
So you can
stars.
just flip it at any time and get to 1500 millimeters. It's like a T5 to 8, 9, I think is right. So I would say that partnered with like the red helium right now is like the wildlife filmmaker kit.
Wait, okay. So how much does that lens weigh? I'm just curious.
A ridiculous amount. It's like a 70, and it's also like a $78,000 lens, and we're just like
Oh my
throwing it
gosh.
around like in dirt. Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
it's pretty awesome. It's a fun lens.
How does one transport? I like you're just backpacking that thing
Yeah.
in?
You're just hiking with it. And that's why you hope you have like a good camera assistant or a
Yeah.
producer that wants to
Yeah.
carry things with you. Because like the only way to support that with a red on rails is to have like an O'Connor or like a Sockler, like a big tripod.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're using like huge O'Connor tripods on like baby legs usually, depending on the subject. And you're just carrying it.
Oh my gosh. So
and-
all you newbies, all you fit newbies, get
Yeah.
out there.
Get like one of those 100-pound sandbags that you can like sling over your shoulders and like hike.
Yeah.
And that's like a great endurance
Just hike for
training.
21 days. You'll be
Yeah.
set. Don't crap out on us at 5. So you gotta be ready. Oh
Yeah.
my word. So all right. So how about your favorite new gadget? One that revolutionizes how you work.
I would say across the industry, and I have 5 of these now. If this was visual, like I could pull them up and show you.
Yeah.
But they are camera traps that you can put DSLR or mirrorless cameras in.
Oh wow. Okay.
It's literally like a modified Pelican case that you can put a DSLR or mirrorless camera in. And I mean, you can put anything from like a Sony A1 if you really wanted to,
Yeah.
like shooting like 8K internal or like Panasonics or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then inside of it is like 2 batteries
Wow. Okay.
that will last like 6 months maybe in the field. And then your camera, and then you've got all your like programming options right there on the side.
Wow.
And it's all wireless. So like it hooks up to an app on your phone.
Wow.
And then you can put like, they have like modified lens ports so that you can put different size lenses on it. Like I got a wide angle on I actually was like testing this new one out on my cat boxes at home because I like knew they were going to come through there. And then like you have a waterproof lens cover.
Oh, okay. Nice.
That goes over it. And then a cover on top of that.
Okay.
And then you actually have, I got one sitting right here, these like triggers, which are like PIR lasers. And you set these up on like a trail, for instance. So this is where like the biology and the ecology aspect really like comes into place. Cause like we can go out into nature and like, let's say we're looking for wolves or something, or like a cat, like a big cat. Mm-hmm. And you could be like, this looks like a spot a big cat or a wolf might come through. Mm-hmm. And like, if we put these lasers up, it'll trip one of these lasers that's in a different spot. Mm-hmm. And you can literally set these things. They're like fully customizable to like trigger and start rolling. Wow. And you can film animals completely undisturbed with these setups. I mean, the fact that like mirrorless cameras and DSLRs are getting so good nowadays as far as like what their internal recording quality is. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's entire sequences shot just on these cameras now where they just rig up maybe like 5 of these, like a wolf den, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you get these like beautiful shots of animals doing what animals do when people aren't around. But I mean, you are leaving these out in nature for like months on end. Yeah. And so like we've put them out and like black bears have come up and like started chewing on them, or like,
oh no,
like they'll literally like yank them down. Like we found them like laying in swamps. Like luckily they're waterproof, but the like kind of running joke in the wildlife world is like, if you're filming in a place with black bears, fully expect your cameras will like probably get messed with. These have kind of been game changers in the wildlife film world. A lot of the old guys in the industry are like, this makes it too easy. But it's like the new thing right now.
That was like one of the ways that they got the first snow leopard, or was it not?
A lot of the snow leopard stuff is now done on these types of camera setups.
All right, so bears chewing on your cameras. I would love to know some other things that have gone wrong. Like, what has been an oh no moment?
The scariest moments don't actually tend to be like with the animals. It's like a result of like bad human behavior. And so like a lot of our closest calls have actually been a result of like people disturbing animals and animals getting angry. Realistically, we should go into a situation like recognizing the signs that make an animal aggressive. Yeah. And like, how do we mitigate that? Because you don't want to send back a whole day of footage where you just have like an angry looking animal just staring at you, because it just doesn't look great for an edit. Yeah, 2021, we had a lot of close encounters with herds of bison in the wild, and it was all other people's fault, which is really frustrating.
Like how so?
In one case, we thought we were in a pretty remote area filming this herd of bison, and they were kind of down in this like little hilly valley. And we actually found another wildlife film crew, which we were not expecting, filming them from another side. And then all the bison were pretty chill. We went down to try and get these shots, and they did something that's pretty frowned upon, which is they tried to basically like get the animals to move for their shot. They like influence their behavior. And of course they got them to move like in our direction. And so all these bison started coming towards us, and then they got spooked by us, and they literally started running a circle around us. Like my camera assistant was like freaking out. If he listens to this, he'll probably think it's funny. But I was still seeing things like through the lens, so like I wasn't as freaked out. But he's like, I've got an air horn ready. Like if we're gonna need to like clear this, like I can try and blow this thing. Come to find out, he didn't actually have an air horn, and we were literally like full camera setup, like backing up, like walking backwards as this herd of bison just kept coming towards us, like in full defense mode.
No.
And that was probably one of the closer calls that we've had with wildlife. It's just like another person doing something like that. Yeah. Because sometimes we're not filming in like totally remote areas, like we're in a national park, and you'll get a lot of like visitors that don't know the etiquette or the way to work around these animals or take photos of them without disturbing them.
We have a listener question from our Instagram at Practical Filmmaker. What is the toughest part of your job?
I think it's the days where you don't see what you're looking for. Like we did 4 weeks in Yellowstone out there trying to film like a very specific animal behavior. for like 2 weeks, we weren't seeing it. And I was getting like pretty nervous and paranoid because it was our first time working with this producer. Like we obviously wanted to deliver the best thing we could.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's nothing you can do in that moment.
Right.
So there's like a level of forgiveness to be had, but that's usually the toughest moment is like you're putting in all these hours a day, not filming the behaviors that you're looking for. It's pretty tough. But also something that you see a lot of as well. I mean, a lot of people who are in this industry really care about conservation. And sometimes you're going to these locations that are starting to get heavily impacted by like humans, or the population numbers of a species are spiraling downward. And you're having to see kind of the effects of that, which are pretty depressing.
I did a New Year's episode and was kind of addressing the why, like this is a tough business and like wildlife filmmaking seems like an exceptionally tough business. I was curious if that is your why, like what is your why? Like,
yeah, I definitely think that's like my purpose in this stems from. And that's the reason Running Wild Media still is doing a significant amount of client work rather than full production, like for TV or movies, is that we still have like very large passion for telling stories that are going to change people's perception of maybe an animal or like positively impact them in a conservation way. Yeah. So like some of our films will be, or projects will be like traditional blue chip filmmaking, which is like animals in the most beautiful environment, no sign of humans, planet Earth style.
Yeah.
And then some of our content is going to be doc style content where it's like, you're going to see a lot of wildlife footage, but we're also going to talk about the researchers who are doing like amazing things or the community that's like rallying around saving a species. We love to play in both of those fields.
Yeah. Kind of diversify that. No, that makes a lot of sense because filmmakers are artists and artists usually feel pretty deeply about something and like that passion usually drives them on. This is another listener question. A favorite story from the field?
When we won the National Geographic Award for our short film, one of our prizes was to go to Africa and shoot for Nat Geo.
Stop.
Yeah. And so we went to Africa and like we filmed some stuff in South Africa around Kruger for one of the shows that they currently had.
Yeah.
And then we actually rented a safari truck on our own after our time was done there. And we drove for 5 weeks total through like South Africa, Botswana, Mozambique, and Namibia. And I mean, each time we're like camping in national parks or like in wild areas.
Yeah.
And so it's like anytime an animal is like wants to come through your campsite, it comes through your campsite.
Yeah.
And our safari truck had like a pop-up tent on top. And then one of us unfortunately had to sleep in a tent on the ground, and we kind of like rotated who got to sleep in like the comfy top tent.
Yeah.
And one night I was sleeping on the ground tent and I had to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. And I had developed this technique where I would like unzip the flap of my tent and then I'd use my flashlight to like kind of do like a strobe thing, like in an attempt to like scare whatever is out there away. And I did that this night and immediately growling came back. And I just zipped up the tent again. And I like laid back down and I'm just my heart was like beating and I'm like, I'm not using the bathroom.
Did you even have to go anymore?
I somehow made it through the night, but like shortly after that, cause I was definitely like not going to sleep anytime soon.
Yeah.
I heard very loud purring just going around my tent. And so I think that there was a leopard maybe like hanging out in our campsite. And I was just like, we're not using the bathroom tonight. Like we're staying in the tent.
Oh my gosh. I mean, all right, I'm a cat lover, but nope.
Yeah. Not a cat that can like carry you. Like I mean, they're awesome to view from a distance, but when they're between your like tent side and you, it's nice that they don't know that like tents are pretty like easy to cut through, I guess is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I guess.
Like we've been on multiple shoots now where we've had to film like some sort of rattlesnake sequence.
Oh.
And they're literally like, all right, boot up and just hike until you find a snake. And we're just doing like transects, like going in a line through like big fields, just waiting until one of us walks up to a rattlesnake. And so
usually
those are
what
always
we like
like
to avoid.
Yeah. And so normally when you hear like someone scream in a national park, it's probably a snake, and you just follow that because it's like, you're going to find a snake probably on the other side of that.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, it sounds like you haven't had any negative interaction with some of these.
No, not
Okay.
with snakes, fortunately. I mean, we've seen some like venomous snakes in places like Costa Rica,
Okay.
but they're usually so chill. Like that's the thing
Yeah.
people don't understand about snakes is like the average location people get bit by a snake is their hands because they're trying to grab it, or their face because they're picking it up and looking at it. But like for the most part, snakes are smart enough that they recognize that people are not something that I can consume. So why waste my time and energy on it?
That makes sense.
So they'll just usually try to get away from you.
Mm-hmm.
But if backed into a corner, they're going to be ready to go.
Yeah. And our last listener question is, what project are you excited about?
A couple projects that we worked on this past year are going to be releasing or just released. We shot for a BBC program called The Mating Game. And it was all about like unique animal courtship behaviors.
Okay.
One of the episodes we got to shoot for was like a conservation focused episode, which we were really excited about.
Yeah.
And we filmed a wolf sequence, which unfortunately didn't end up making it into the episode for time. And then we filmed a sequence about one of the rarest mammals in the world, the black-footed ferret.
Ooh.
But it's actually the first cloned endangered species.
Wait, back up.
It's pretty crazy. So we filmed this. There's this ferret facility.
Okay.
With endangered ferrets in North America out in Colorado. They have a cloned ferret called Elizabeth Ann, and she's a black-footed ferret. And she's actually a clone of a ferret that died in the 80s.
Wow.
And so we went and filmed this clone for the sequence in The Mating Game that David Attenborough narrated.
What?
That was like one of my life goals. That's like the dream of most wildlife filmmakers, is to get something. But it was interesting because we filmed it during like the time of COVID. Ferrets apparently are like very susceptible to COVID and human diseases.
Oh.
So we actually had to film the entire sequence through the building's windows from the outside. And so like we were like black taping up all the windows or sheeting up all the windows, cutting holes in them for the lenses.
Yeah.
And literally filming entire sequence from outside the building in like 100-degree days when it was like crazy windy.
Oh.
So yeah, it was fun. But it was a clone, which was cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
So they took a DNA sample from the one that died in the 80s.
Okay.
They were worried about like the genetics of the population of remaining black-footed ferrets. And they're like, we need to inject some new genetics into this population. So let's bring back a ferret from the 80s to breed amongst all these other ones.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is physically this 1980s ferret.
Wow. That's so wild.
Yeah, it was weird.
That's so wild.
You're like looking at it and you're like, you're weird, but you look like a normal ferret. And so it was interesting in that way.
Yeah. What questions should I have asked you?
I mean, the question that every wildlife filmmaker gets is like, what's the scariest wildlife encounter? That's like a question that I think gets asked too much. So I'm trying to think of what the opposite of that would be. One of the biggest parts of wildlife filmmaking was traveling to exotic locations, spending tons of money on gas, planes, like cargo, like your carbon footprint was massive just to go to a place to film and tell people like, oh, we need to do conservation better. Fortunately, because of COVID, they've started to really look into like who is a good cam op in a location that we want to film in, and hiring local has just become like more of a thing lately.
Wow. Yeah, that's good.
That's definitely one of the things that you think about the most. Like I've started to want to do more projects locally within the United States because I know like we have some amazing wildlife here. It may not be as exciting as like Australia or Africa to some people, but we have things we should care about here. And so to get people to care about them is important.
I really appreciate this. You've shed a lot of light on this. How do people find you or follow your work?
You can find my website, which is agoetzfilm.com, AGOETZ film. And then my Instagram handle is actually the same thing.
Okay. Nice.
So from there, you can kind of find anything you want to find.
Okay.
But that's a great spot to go to communicate or anything.
Nice. Thank you so much. Man, you rock. This is so
Thanks
cool.
for having me.
This is great. If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and on Instagram. Ask us questions and check out more episodes at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.